I'm taking it we're going to follow the sustainment strategy for Virginia, which is over a 33 lifespan. There's 3 extended dry dock limited or restricted availability periods and 1 depot maintenance period, I think is the terminology they use.
Senator Admiral Buckley, just from the requirements point of view, and just to be direct answer to your question, we are using the Virginia instance and usage and upkeep cycle as our model, with the aim to not deviate from that unless absolutely necessary. And as you've characterised it, the Virginia class has around 3 very deep maintenance activities, which in US terminology is depot maintenance activity. For the most part, most of the rest of their maintenance activities are conducted in the water. So what we would normally do in Collins for those shorter activities, and Senator Birmingham, you referred to an intermediate docking that's done at Henderson at the moment. Those kinds of sort of more frequent dockings for Virginias are more often than not done in the water, and it's those very large overhauls that happen in that sort of 8 to 10 year period over the life of the submarine that happen in a dry dock scenario.
So where I'm going with this is that, as per earlier evidence, I think from yourself, is that the requirements we're setting are our requirements, but they're consistent with the US. So in terms of our capacity and capability to do maintenance, we will cover the full span that a Virginia requires, but the time frame will be set by what we need at the moment.
That is correct, Senator. It will be set to our requirements, but of course heavily informed by how the US and the lessons they've learned over the last decade and a half of Virginia operations. And my colleague, Air Vice Marshal Tamman, and his team is, in their acquisition strategy, looking at the support strategy at the same time. How do we take that Virginia instance and apply it to the Australian context?
So my question on time frame is, according to the US documentation I've seen, I think they call it post-shakedown availability, kicks off that 33-year period in cycles. I've seen various reports about whether we will be buying brand new Virginia or some that may already have some use on them. What are we planning for if the first boat we have is already used half of its first, say, 10-year cycle in terms of getting that dry docking capability? Are we looking at floating docks as opposed to a graving dock? What's the redundancy that we're putting in our system?
Yes, Senator, I understand your question, and the planning basis at the moment is that we will be taking delivery of the first 2 Virginia class, taking delivery of submarines that have just completed an extended deep level maintenance activity in the United States. We expect, but we're still working through the detail, that that's most likely going to be after their first cycle. So those submarines will still have several cycles of operating beyond that. And our planning basis then is that we would be requiring our own depot maintenance activity in the very latter part of the 2030s. So we're working to that basis, that the Virginias that we receive, Virginias 1 or 2, will have just completed a deep level maintenance activity. So the planning basis for both the workforce and the infrastructure for the depot maintenance is centred up on the latter part of the 2030s.
Sure.
We do, of course, need to ensure that should there be an event or an unexpected requirement to dock the submarine before that, so a contingent requirement, we're basing that on our sovereign ready requirement in the early 2030s. So that is the sort of thing that you might use a floating dock or something like that for, where you took the submarine out of the water for a shorter period of time to remediate a defect that required docking. So 2 specific things. One is a contingent docking requirement, and then the second one is the ability and capacity to conduct a full deep maintenance activity.
Sure.